Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Brent0331. Got a live stream for you tonight. Got some special guests. Going to go around the horn and introduce them. So, no shocker, no surprise. We got Les of Pegasus Tests. He's a reoccurring guest on the stream. Les has his own YouTube channel. Be sure to check it out. Pegasus Tests. Les, thanks for jumping on tonight. Reoccurring guest on the stream. Les has. Oh, you're a recurring guest, and you make a mistake of having your volume too loud.
Shit happens, dude.
All right, long time no see, but we got John, Alpha Charlie Concepts, also UW Gear. That's his company, and those are his two YouTube channels. John, thanks for jumping on tonight.
Always, brother.
We got Chad. Chad and I go way back, served together in the United States Marine Corps, and he's got some new new apparel. Looks great, Chad. All right. We got the Thrill 8762. What's up, brother? Welcome aboard. This is Will. He's a Marine. He also has a law enforcement background. Thanks for jumping on tonight, brother.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
All right. Long time no see. We got Mike Klein, Small Team Supply. Welcome aboard, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Glad you guys can make it on. Okay. So we got several. Oh, hold on. We got a last minute join here. Logan, what's going on, man? You're muted, brother.
Hey. Technical difficulties tonight.
All right, no problem, man. Freaking Army always showing up late. Figures. So, all right, guys. So we got a nice healthy panel. Logan, do you have an intel update for us, real quick?
Yeah, which part do you want first? China, Middle East, Ukraine.
Whatever, man. Just go ahead and throw it out there, and then I do want to hit the pistol braces at some point. So. Let's go ahead and give a brief, and then we'll kick this off. Go ahead.
Yeah, so in the Middle East, we got a couple of new instances of activity. We have the ceasefire that happened approximately 5 days ago with the exchange of prisoners. I just call them prisoners, no hostages. And for now, that seems like it's a roadmap to a full humanitarian pause now, but there's been meetings between UN officials and the Biden administration to pressure the Netanyahu government to escalate this to a full ceasefire. I don't know if it's actually going to happen, though. And there's also been two ships that have been taken in the Red Sea and also in the vicinity of Red Sea. One has been a Somali. They thought it was going to be another Houthi action, like a helicopter shipboarding action, which is pretty cool. But the last one that happened yesterday was actually the Somali pirates. And it was kind of, everybody was giving the U.S. Navy some hard times about it, but I'll let Les cover that. What else? In Ukraine, there was like a freak 100-year storm that happened last 72 hours. And it's basically put all operations on hold for probably for the next couple of days at least. From what I saw, there's about 10-foot snow drifts in like large parts of the country. And if you look at the metrics for like destroyed enemy vehicles and enemy personnel from both sides, they're both saying that literally no enemy vehicles or equipment was destroyed on probably like ones or twos or threes. It's all been like 750 dead, like infantry on the Russian side and unknown amount on the Ukrainian side. Avdiivka is shaping up to be a debacle, in my opinion. There's a attitude in Kyiv that there's no step back, kind of like defend every meter of ground. It's going to be a big mistake, I think, because the flexibility of defense is really paramount when it comes to this kind of activity. And it looks like neither Zaluzhny, his sub-commanders, the brigade commanders, or Zelensky and the government want anything, any kind of fallback. And there have been articles in the past 48 hours talking about how Zaluzhny is not the Napoleon that everybody thought he was being propped up as. And there's basically been like my insider information from guys that talk to me all the time are telling me that the guys on the very front, like zero line, are usually TDF and territorial defense force guys, and usually guys in the second line are usually like more regular Army units. But lately, probably in the past couple of weeks, it's been like all hands on deck, and even like special operations units are holding trench line for defense now. So that can give you kind of an indicator of like the not a desperate situation, but like it's shaping up to be the static situation of the Ukrainian army is unfolding, and their mobility and ability to react to other offensives in the area are they're really failing at they're really failing at dealing with the shaping operations that are happening to them. I think if you look at Soviet tactics in the World War II, it was kind of the same thing along the Eastern Front. They would engage all parts of the front at once, and then there would be a large offensive in the north or the south, some like Army Group North, Army Group South, and then the main blow would come in another part of the front. So when we were talking about Kupiansk in the north being where a large part of their forces, the 25th Army Group, is stationed, they've been pushing there, but not very hard. And most of the stuff you're seeing is Avdiivka. There's like 40 or 50,000 Russians hitting that, but they're taking huge losses and not making a whole bunch of gains. So this is comparable to like the operations before Stalingrad, and how they attacked in the north, Army Group North, and then kind of like held up a bunch of the mobile units of the German army, and then the actual main blow came at Stalingrad that was actually depleted because of that. So they've done this probably 3 or 4 times since the war started, and I think they'll probably try to do it again. There'll be another main effort somewhere along the front that we're not looking at right now, or maybe we are expecting it, but it's not being assessed. Let's see. In China, there's been a couple of interceptions from our naval vessels and around the Persil Islands, and they interacted with one of our guided missile destroyers with jets and other small boats and stuff like that. And it was like a political win for the Chinese government, but really it was just a normal interception.
You good? Round's complete? All right. Thanks for that update, Logan. So sorry, guys. I'm shooting from the hip tonight. Current events. It's been a while since we've had a stream. So I've got a couple guys on here that I think might have to pop smoke early. So I want to hit this topic real quick, and then we'll get back to the geopolitical stuff. But transitioning real quick back to the U.S. Pistol braces. So I got Mike, Small Team Supply Man. Go ahead and fill us in, and then we'll open this up to the floor. I don't think this topic's going to go around very long, and then we'll get on to the geopolitical stuff.
So currently where we're at is there's a nationwide injunction or stay against the ATF's pistol brace ban, so you should be legal to use it. There's a few stays that were in effect before this in regards to certain member groups like Firearms Policy Coalition. They were the first guys to get on it, get that injunction, and then I think Gun Owners of America, whatever. But be that as may, right now it's a nationwide stay. So, you know, it's until this gets appealed up to the Supreme Court or something, it's free to use them. You know, it's lawful item.
So in other words, you don't need to be part of any group, any association, or anything like that, because that's kind of what it was before.
Correct.
So weapons free with pistol braces, guys. Did anybody think anything else was going to happen with this?
Well, I mean, the main thing is the pistol brace was this whole like shotgun pattern regulations where they're just going after everything. They're going after pistol braces. They're going after triggers. They're going after
They just went after smoke grenades last week.
Yeah, smoke grenades, right? It's just on and on and on and on. they're just shotgunning out everything out there and seeing what sticks, So it's this is the most aggressive I ever saw any rulemaking or policy making that affects millions of Americans that I've ever seen. And it doesn't seem like almost anything's sticking, but that doesn't mean it isn't getting people jammed up, their property seized, harassed, etc. So, it's 2023 America, I guess.
I think the funny thing is if you were gullible enough to register your SBR with pistol brace with the ATF, that's now a SBR, and you can't cross state lines without notifying the ATF now. So
yeah, it's I mean, let's be real. I mean, the NFA clearly, in regards to short barrel devices, isn't posing any hazard to the general public any more than conventional 16-inch and above length rifles. I mean, if they're going to claim that all these SBRs that have been out there under the guise of pistols are extremely dangerous, where's the bodies? You know what I mean? So it to me, it just shows the ridiculousness of having it in the first place.
And the problem is here lately, if you haven't been looking at their website on a regular basis, there's stuff that's went by and you have no idea what's out there. Like Les said, they're banning everything from dang on smoke grenades to freaking fake suppressors, pistol braces, all kinds of things. So they're just all over the place. I will say one thing: it didn't take as long as I thought it would take to have this nationwide injunction. It moved kind of rather quickly, and I think that's because of the amount of people out there that had these devices, or not devices, but furniture.
Hey, real quick, I saw Douchebag Brothers Dick in the comment section. I just want to show you my holiday special Shiner bot. So cheers, brother. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. I think I was watching Mr. Guns and Gear channel, one of his legal update videos, and he was talking about a court case about, I think it was tasers or stun guns, and the ruling was that there was like, a couple 100,000 of these in a particular state, and they were ruled in common use, right? A couple 100,000, and yet you think about pistol braced SBRs and like the millions that are out there in the United States. Like to think that are not in common use at this point is laughable.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say over the past, like 5 years now, if you own a full-size AR-15, you probably got a pistol-braced one too.
Well, remember too, Brent, the in common use term came about from a SCOTUS ruling on stun guns and for civilian ownership, and they ruled that it was legal because of being in common use. And I think the number of stun guns that they ruled as making it in common use was something like 200,000 or something like that. So if you contrast 200,000 of that being in common use versus the estimated 30 to 40 million braces, which is probably on the low side, it's going to be a hard row to hoe to fight against that previous ruling with that precedent already being set for what determines in common usage.
Yeah, 100%. So,
yeah,
all
but
right.
If anything, it just feels like general harassment, like some of the other guys have mentioned. It's just they're just seeing what sticks, and they're cranking out new regulations, new harassment measures every day.
Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because some are going to get through, like the UTM ban. There's some things people aren't going to fight, like the smoke grenade ban. All the credit in the world to the Milsimmers. They don't have the organizations that the 2A has behind them, or the deep pockets to go fight that.
When even the big groups like FPC and GOA, they still have to be very careful and contemplate exactly how and where they want to spend their resources, because they're not, they're not infinite either. They've got to find that amount of resource, and they got to pick, what's the most important things to devote their time and energy and resources to. So I think they're just trying to throw as much stuff against the wall as they can right now, overload the system and see what they can get to stick, and then, hope for the best on their part. But
unless we talked about that at the last semester with the grenades and whatnot, that possibility of them coming down on those, we should have played the damn numbers that day too, because we'd be rich.
Yeah, no kidding. It's an interesting thing because it's so gray. Like, the same company makes the Mil-X, which is now clearly banned by name on the ATF thing, makes other smoke grenades that are kind of smaller, like photographers use them for special effects. They're not banned. So, I mean, it's so capricious and arbitrary, it won't probably survive a legal challenge. The question will be, can anybody afford to mount the legal challenge?
Here's a good point from Douchebag Brothers Day. So, I guess,
or to sell them, you also have to have an explosives license, which is a different type of FFL. So it's a crimp in the style for sure.
You need to get Dick on here, Brent.
We say banned because who's buying a freaking explosive rated box and getting all the placards and whatnot, and where you can have those at? So ultimately, it is a dang ban.
It's a de facto ban.
Yeah, it's a ban. I mean, you can still make your own out of your household chemicals and things of that nature, but I think what they actually banned, if I'm not mistaken, is damn igniters, right?
That's their excuse. Although, if you know anything about the EG-18s and the Mil-X's, they have nothing in common with military ignition systems on M18s, for example, other than just they look the same.
So the ones we use at One Shepherd are what they're targeting?
Yeah, and even that, it's the language is all just muddled. I mean, you really need a lawyer to frickin' figure it out.
Well, I can't speak for the entire One Shepherd, but I know what we'll do until we get the right word. Now, with the ban, I heard that they were starting to sell on some websites again, some of the braces and whatnot, because lawyers for big companies are like, it's an injunction. Let's go ahead and start rocking and rolling again. And I'm sure people are going to start buying the hell out of them.
Carmelo was having all over Black Friday sales, so they're confident in what they're doing.
Hey, they started selling braces within 30 minutes of that injunction going nationwide. I know PSA and 2 or 3 other companies basically just took all their existing stock, set it aside, and just waited. And the moment that it went national, they just pushed the button on the computer and put it back live. And I've got it on fairly good authority. They've been selling like mad.
And I'm sure it's going to be the same way if the FRT thing gets good to go too. They're just going to hit the enter button, boop, and I know a lot of yahoos that'll be buying things like that, bump stocks too, frames and receivers, all the shit that they've been trying.
They've got the numbers on the FRTs too to follow under the in common use clause. So it's put ATF in a bit of a conundrum. They got to be how careful how far they push this, because if they really want to push it all the way to the Supreme Court, one ruling on something like pistol braces worded the right way could knock out 4 or 5 other things that they're trying to do. So, it's going to be interesting to see how hard they really want to push some of this stuff, especially with the election year coming up.
Like Brent likes to point out, though, this all started from one thing a few years ago, and it was they got that ball rolling, and the shitstorm just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yep.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's really interesting and all coming from this pretty well disgraced agency. I mean, you go back to Ruby Ridge, Waco, Elian Gonzalez, Fast and Furious. And then for a while there, they seemed like they settled down. They were okay, right? It seemed like some actual adults got a hold of that organization, or at least they weren't getting black eyes every time they turned around. And then, and I'm going to blame Trump. He went in there. I saw him. He fired ATF director after ATF director until he got the yes man that would go along with whatever he said on the bump brace. And now Biden's like, oh, yeah, we got the yes man in there. Okay, yes man, attack the Second Amendment.
It depends on the administration. I remember when Bush was in power and John Ashcroft was the attorney general and came right out and said Second Amendment was an individual right. All the gun store owners around me were saying like, oh, yeah, ATF went being from hard and stern to trying to be your best buddy and inviting you over to Christmas dinner.
All right. Do we have any
cool one there, buddy, with Elion? Ooh, hadn't heard that one in a long time.
We have any other points on this? I think we all agree. We hate the ATF. They suck. Repeal the NFA. Stabilizing braces are back.
Did anybody really take them off, honestly?
Well, of course.
I think Firearms Policy Coalition got a lot of new members real quick.
Yeah, Mike sent me that link. He's like, "Hey man, join this organization."
That's right. A lot of organizations got a lot more members, that's for sure. But it was good to see that it went nationwide, though, for everybody, as it should have never went that far anyway.
What was it, Mike? It was like $30 for the year.
Yeah, it was something like that. I think it's just a membership. I don't even know if it expires.
Oh man! All right. Well, what national or geopolitical issue do we want to conquer first?
May I?
Yes, you may. You got the
All right. Well, since we're on current events, I'm hoping we can go to a recent story from the Pentagon asking for $114 million for diversity, equity, and inclusion training. A lot of people on my side of the political aisle are complaining about how wasteful this is, and yes, they're right, but DEI has nothing to do with, to quote Patton, making the other poor dumb bastard die for his country. But I would argue that we are missing the big picture here. So I want to hit on this if we can. I think this story is about 3 days old, so it is recent. From a political standpoint, this is a testament to the effectiveness of left-wing subversion. Think about it. If a civil war were to break out, the people in power will have to rely on the support of the military. And while surveys and polls differ on whether the military is more left or right-leaning, almost all reputable sources will tell you that conservative Americans are more likely to join the military, meaning that conservatives are more likely overrepresented in the military. So DEI in the military is an attempt to insert a leftist presence in the military, and this is nothing new. The idea of the Long March through the institutions, and Long March being a reference to the Chinese Communist Long March during the Chinese Civil War, was made popular by a neo-Marxist radical named Herbert Marcuse, who called for a political restructuring of a society by working against the established institutions while working within them. So essentially, those who don't go to college will receive left-wing indoctrination, and who didn't receive left-wing indoctrination in college can now receive it in the military. So I know we're Brent's channel is a military channel. We're going to talk about war. I know there's wars going on in Ukraine and Israel. But as the ancient Roman historian Polybius points out, most societies fall from within, not from external forces. So a lot of us are vets on this channel. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. How does this affect our national readiness?
That's a good point, Chad, and it's not an easy answer. The DEI training could go either way for them, because it could just be the newest form of sexual harassment or suicide prevention training, and we all know how we react to that, so it could be a big fizzle for them. However, I also think back to certain historical precedents, the big one being the bonus army. The military followed its orders right there. It attacked its own and stuff. And the same thing will happen again. And I guarantee you, if there were to be an incident like that, they won't do something like, hey, 1st Infantry Division, attack those veterans over there. No, it'll be, hey, that group over there is molesting children and making crack. And, once you tell Private Snuffy, get your Bradley up in that vehicle, no force on the universe will stop it from happening.
Chad, you want to answer that question about the merch?
What was it? I missed it.
Somebody's asking about all the stuff you're wearing.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm glad to pimp this gentleman's channel. You guys heard me mention him before if you watched past videos. Dr. James Lindsay is kind of the recent scholarly academic. He's like the authority on wokeism. He's written a few books, the Marxification of Education, Race Marxism. You can go to his website, New Discourses, and order this stuff. He is a left-leaning person. He's a mathematics professor, but he basically got interested in this stuff by reading all the Marxist literature, and he deciphers it for the layman, so to speak. And so New Discourses, he's got podcast, YouTube videos, and a website. He's more on the academic side if you're into that stuff, but he sells this stuff. So
Awesome. You got anything on what Chad was talking about?
Well, what about your opinion, Brent? I mean, you're still in the military, so
well, that's why I have to defer to you guys.
I mean, have you seen any of this that you can speak to?
I haven't. No, I haven't. No. So other than over the years, seeing like the female integration into combat arms and stuff like that, I haven't seen any of this stuff.
That's a topic worthy of an entire video itself. But yeah,
right. I mean, we've dabbled into that, but like all the stuff that people are shooting Red Star clusters over, I never see that on my level, really. Have I seen a slide or two in a PowerPoint that I'm like, makes me shake my head? Yes. But outside that, no. But again, I'm not on active duty, reserve nature, so I'm not there 24/7.
I'm going to jump in if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
This is kind of like one of those like who gives a shit type of situations. Like, as you saw, like in the past week and a half, we've seen the letters come out from DoD that are walking back the COVID terminations of our military personnel. And it's just like they will always walk back anything that's unpopular at the time. And you're seeing, this letter come out saying that, if you were terminated because of a COVID restriction because you didn't want to take the vaccine, that now you can change your DD-214 to say that you're honorably discharged, fully. And also that they're thinking about giving these certain people an opportunity to come back in and back pay. Think about that. So this is just another one of those somebody's good idea fairy shit that will probably be walked back eventually in the next 5 years. I don't know what you think.
And to that, all the guys that had to get out separated because of that, they need to get their DD-214s changed back, whether they want to go back in and do all the other stuff. That they do need to look into that. That'll help in the long run.
None of those guys got dishonorable discharges.
They got generals though, right?
I think they were all honorable, if I remember correctly. I believe
so just their RA codes that were jacked up.
It was probably their codes.
Yeah, it was probably that because they couldn't at that particular time. They were considered non-deployable. So it's like if you can't fucking deploy, you're what good are you in the U.S. military? So that was the thinking of the time. So that was probably what it was. Their reenlistment codes. But
yeah,
if I remember
correctly, up for some of them missed out on benefits and stuff like that until they could get that fixed. So that's awesome.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, they were all honorable discharges. So, and it hurt. Yeah, a lot of guys were forced out. So,
and the general public seeing that too, that wasn't good too. I mean, that goes to the recruiting numbers that are so down too. They're like, look, I mean, they're forcing these guys to do things, and we all know that we're told to do some stuff, and you got to do it. But I mean, when they had legitimate, questions about it or religious exemptions, and they were just told them all to pound sand and fucking suck it up or buttercup or get out. And then a lot of them were like, man, they're not going to kick all of us out. That's bullshit. Well,
I mean, they gutted our health industry. A lot of other industries, they gut it from guys not wanting to get the thing.
And there was a lot of companies and organizations and police, fire, a lot of them were made, hey, you got to get it or you got to get the fuck out. And dudes are like, well, I got to pay bills.
And the weird thing with that is they didn't recognize natural immunity or any of this stuff. I mean, you had nurses, doctors working through the whole freaking pandemic being exposed to this stuff like every day for a freaking, year, 2 years. And they were like, now you got to get the shot. It's like, dude, I've been around this thing for like 2 years. If I'm not already ready to go, it just doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? And then there's a lot of questions as to the experimental nature of it and all the stuff. And then all the information is coming out now that, a lot of people have had problems since getting the shot. So, it's a bad deal all around. And I really think they should make amends best they can for all the people that called it right and didn't get the shot. You know what I mean? If they want, I mean, honestly, I'm done with all those guys. I'd never tie my.
Admit it's wrong.
Yeah, they need to. I mean, you're right.
They need to, but chances of it actually happening.
It's like, wow, crazy concept, right?
I don't know what this is supposed to mean, but thanks, brother. Hey, I appreciate the super chats, guys. I had to renew my freaking subscription to this streaming service today, so appreciate you. So, going back to the vaccine thing, we've talked about the vaccine at length in previous streams, but I remember I'm gonna bring this up. This was a real thing. Okay, we weren't the only country being communist on this vaccine at that particular time. A lot of partner nations around the world were just as draconian, if not more, than they were here in the United States, particularly in the left-leaning states. So I remember being briefed that several of these countries that are partner nations with us, would not allow Marines and or sailors to, come ashore and do XYZ in their country unless they were vaccinated. So that was one of the things that was, being briefed and told to us at that particular time. So me personally, having gone through the whole gamut of fucking anthrax shots and every other God knows fucking liquid vaccine stuck into my body, I didn't really give a shit. I just didn't want to wear a damn mask while training for war.
Yeah, that was crazy. Wearing those masks. I mean,
yeah.
I hated. What are you guys doing?
My hatred of masks trumped my fear of any vaccine.
Well, I mean,
my kid couldn't go back to Hawaii to where she lived without getting freaking tested and shots and all that during the heyday. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I know people that got freaking 5 shots because they wanted to go to college. You know what I mean? It's like, why? They proved it that if you're young and healthy, you're going to be fine without getting the shot. And then they proved that if you get the shot, it actually makes you more susceptible to it. So, I mean, it's not like they had real science behind it, even though they tried to beat you in the head that they did, but they didn't, So really showed how big of liars they all were and how you shouldn't trust any of them. But
Les will tell you, when we went to the 40th in Missouri, the difference between our neck of the woods and out in the middle of the country during the big part of COVID was just night and day. It was like, wow, you guys are still living out here.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I remember going out to the One Shepherd summer semester in the summer of 2020. Out there, it's like it wasn't even happening. I saw no masks, nobody cared, and they were all just fine. You probably saw that too, right, Mike?
Yeah, I never wore a mask my entire time, and I never got the shot or anything like that. And now the bigger cities, like even like a small town like Springfield, Missouri, they had mask mandates and stuff like that. The hospitals were crazy with the mask stuff too. I mean, I had to my wife was giving birth to my first son, and I'm sleeping on the couch on and off, dozing off, and every time the nurse popped in, she's like, "Better put that mask on." I'm like, you kidding me? You know, they wouldn't let me ride in the ambulance with my wife to the freaking hospital. You know what I mean? Like, why?
Oh yeah, you're spot on with these big cities. You know, a personal anecdote: we went to Nashville, and they actually had cops on every street corner, yelling at people and threatening them with citations for not wearing masks. But I'm from a small town about 2 hours away, and we had businesses staying open in defiance of our governor during the short-term shutdown. So yeah, I can definitely sympathize.
So
Well,
yeah,
in
as
the
long as you stayed
rural, deep rural,
as long as you stayed out of the big cities, you're fine. You can live as an American, you know. But yeah, you go to the bigger cities, it's a different world. It's not America. That's what it taught me.
well, I can tell
Y'all
you for
see
a fact, in
the
the very rural areas of the deep south, lots of that stuff was just straight up blatantly ignored, and you were looked at like you had something wrong with you if you were following it.
did y'all see where the USS Mason went to do anti-piracy down there in the Mediterranean when the guys were trying to take over the tankers and called for distress, and they responded, and then allegedly there might have been some missiles fired at them, but now they're trying to say no, they were actually firing at the tanker, not at the Alley Burke.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's an interesting one. That whole thing with the Houthis, because if you rewind a bit and go back to the first engagement, the Navy's let out something very interesting. Those first cruise missiles that were fired by the Houthis up towards Israel that the USS Carney intercepted, also a Arleigh Burke class destroyer. The Navy listed out that not only did we engage them with SM-2s, anti-aircraft missile for area defense, one of them was also engaged by the ship's Sea-Whiz, which is its close-in weapon system. Nice little R2-D2 looking Gatling gun, which is good for targets within 2 kilometers. So I find that very interesting because the missiles were aimed at Israel. And if they're cruise missiles, why would you have to use your Sea-Whiz? The other thing that's interesting here is so far the government's being pretty mum about that seized car carrier. It's been seized. The crew's been seized. It's a British flagged Japanese ship owned by an Israeli, and it is owned by an Israeli. If you follow all the convoluted ship ownership things, which that's not unusual. Every ship ownership thing is convoluted to say the least. Not really, the government's not really saying much. And I find that interesting too, because that tells me the US Navy was caught by surprise, or else they'd have better statements. And then the statement, the situation that Will just brought up with the Mason, where they foiled an attack of some kind on a tanker. The story's a little confused. Right now, it's basically Somali pirates now attacked the Central Park, but the crew went to their armored hideout panic room. So the Somalis just left. And then when the Mason chased them down, and then the Yemenis fired some ballistic type missiles, but they didn't land anywhere near the ships. And the Navy said they were firing at Central Park, not the Mason. I'm sure the ships are close together, but the missiles landed 10 miles away. So if anybody can figure that pile of spaghetti out, please let me know.
In the last report I heard, they had gotten the boarders or the pirates too. The Navy had scooped them up as they were trying to get out of there.
Yeah, it's each of these 3 incidents all have something strange about it. Either the Carney engaging with its Sea-Whiz, how a Yemeni helicopter flown by the Houthis got all the way out into the Bab al-Mandab and put a boarding party onto a ship without us knowing about it. And then 3, this who actually attacked the ship and who fired the missiles at what ship. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Where are the sailors now? Are they being held captive for ransom, or what's the deal with them?
They are being held captive by the Houthis. As much as they are a government, they're holding them captive. The ship's in port in Yemen. And that is the last of the updates I've seen. At that point, nobody's really saying anything about it, which I find very interesting because, one, it doesn't look like the Yemenis have demanded a ransom for the ship or anything for it. And yet there's none of the political statements that I can find out there, doesn't mean they're not there, that I can find that kind of hint that some government somewhere is going to do something. Because one of the things you got to figure, that ship, that was a ro-ro car carrier. There's a hell of a lot of money on that ship if she was full of cars. So somebody's taking a haircut right now. So, and that's got to be causing political heat for one of these governments involved.
Logan, you got anything on that?
No, like I was saying in the chat, there's a lot of speculation right now, but there's no real confirmed intel that's saying anything one way or the other. I think that, like Les said, if governments are caught with their pants down, they're never going to admit that they were, and there's just going to be an information blackout for probably like a month. Then they'll come out with something saying, this ship was carrying cars or was carrying whatever, was carrying weapons. Who knows what it was carrying, honestly. And the Israelis and the Yemenis engage in shady dealings as far as like arms transports. So does Iran. So does Saudi Arabia. And we actually don't know what's on that ship. So I'm not going to speculate. And but you can use your imagination. These Houthis don't go after ships just because.
Yeah, that's the next interesting fact to come out. The Galaxy Leader is a ro-ro ship, roll on, roll off. That tends to be vehicles. NYK, a lot of their ro-ro traffic is for automakers. So the logical assumption is that it's new production vehicles from somewhere going somewhere. But again, that's just an assumption because there's no hard data out there. And which is also kind of strange because normally when the ships are seized, you get to find out the cargo right away.
All right, what else we got?
There's some guys in the chat that wanted to talk about the gunning down of one of the security chiefs of Sinaloa Cartel's son, El Chapo. I think we've probably been seeing, like you guys probably talked about this before, but even though it happened in LA, it's not going to be like a retribution situation like in the United States. This is a war that's been going on between CJ&J, like New Jalisco Cartel, and Los Zetas, because really once El Chapo got locked up the first time, his little kingdom fell apart, and there was a vying for power between several of his deputies, his son, and these new cartels came about in that time period. And I mean, these guys get killed all the time. It just happened to be this one was in LA. So in reference to the question about that, I don't think it's going to affect U.S. Safety or U.S. Security in any way. I think that just they knew he was there. He was a target of opportunity, and they freaking killed him.
You got anything on that? It's interesting. I haven't heard that story yet. So, I mean, it's not surprising with our open borders. So,
no, I took a diving class, open water course this a couple months ago, and they always have like a little, because we're pretty close to the ocean, to the Baja from where I am right now. But the road to get there goes through some shady territory that's owned by Gulf Cartel. And it used to be you could go to Rocky Point or any of these places on the Baja and eat oysters or whatever the hell, and you wouldn't have to worry about anything. But lately, these roads that are usually patrolled by the municipal Mexican police and the national police are not safe. And I mean, these boomers that are coming from Arizona, Phoenix, and going down to the beach or whatever to warm up, like they're running into problems. They're getting their vehicles stolen a lot more often now. And as we saw last year, the couple from from Chicago, they went down there trying to, they were probably acting like a fool, but they were mistaken for people that were moving in on the Gulf Cartel's territory, and they were killed and taken hostage. So I think we have to evaluate, like, I guess, like in our own families, like if we allow, freedom of movement through those areas, I think we can reassess that it's not really as safe as it used to be there. But that's all I can think about right now.
Yeah, I have no aspirations going down to Mexico anytime soon. So it's a shame too, because I spent my honeymoon down there with my wife, and we had a fantastic time. But man, I wouldn't be caught dead down there right now. So essentially, I'm not going anywhere where I can't carry a firearm.
You can take them in, but you can't take them back out.
Yeah.
Just like your car.
Hey, people keep asking about this thing underneath my nose. So after celebrating the Marine Corps birthday, I immediately, the subsequent day, trying to recover from the Marine Corps ball, I went out to California to do the SERE Challenge. It was one of the cadre help for the SERE Season 3. And while I was up there in the mountains in California with Grunt Proof, just let my shit go. And when I came back, I was like, you know what? I've never had a freaking mustache. Never had the opportunity. And my Marine Corps training was early on in the month. So I was like, let's try to grow a little Magnum PI stash here.
Man, I just thought you scratched your ass and then scratched your nose.
So it's only got about a couple more weeks, and then it's going to be gone. So that'll be fun.
An old dirt diggler there.
All right, let's pivot. Let's pivot to Israel. What's the latest and greatest there? They've had essentially a ceasefire for some hostages releasing, and it looks like Hamas is kind of doing a slow trickle of releasing people, and that was the last update I got.
Yeah, don't go on Twitter and say, "See, it's a ceasefire." Get your head chopped off.
It's a humanitarian pause. Wish Doc was here to explain the intricacies of that difference in terminology.
The nuances.
There you go. Using that $5 word and stuff. I will give the Israelis credit pulling a tactic out of the Vietnam playbook. Used to be when we'd find a tunnel complex, especially in Marines up in I Corps, you'd fill it full of smoke and see where the smoke came out to figure out the tunnel complex. The Israelis went a step farther and just filled it full of seawater, which I think is just absolutely awesome.
Is that what they did?
Yeah, they just put hoses from the Mediterranean right into the tunnel entrances and started filling it with water.
Well, I guess the problem that you run into those if there's hostages down there.
You know what? I bet you they would sit there.
I'm sure
start getting close to the hostages, they'll let us know. And if we accidentally,
I guess they figured more crime the first time.
Still, you got to get
all American,
innovation,
right?
Or bringing back a classic, whichever.
That's what I keep seeing on the news is that they're letting hostages go, but not as many Americans as they would I guess we would want. But I know there's been a few. I know some smaller youngins have gotten out recently. I know that's been all over the news, all the homecomings and whatnot, but there's still a lot more over there. Hostages or prisoner calling them.
Yeah, they released mostly like old ladies and children from what I saw. And yeah. The interesting non-story is IDF casualties. And the released casualty lists that I've seen have been, strangely, there's been quite a few company-grade officers that have been killed. And I was just thinking to myself, like, okay, you've had these captains killed, major killed. How are all the guys that are being killed right now, company officers? And what does that tell me about what the actual attrition rate is? I don't know what your guys' thoughts are.
Well, one, the Israeli philosophy has always been lead from the front. So they tend to take a higher ratio of losses in officers to enlisted than most armies. So on one level, that doesn't surprise me. On the other hand, it tells you they're having close combat with the enemy, and it tells you the old axiom that mount eats people, and it's chewing the Israelis up. The tanks do good stuff, but only so far. Sounds like they're also starting to learn their lesson that we were commenting about early in the war, that they're supporting their armor with infantry finally. Because that's what happens when you support armor with infantry. The infantry takes the hit.
Yeah, is it really, though, like lead from the front, or is it the fact that there isn't really an NCO corps to speak of within the IDF?
That would be a recent development because the NCO corps has been there since the War of Independence in 48. So I'd be pretty shocked. Now, you could probably have a great discussion on the quality of said corps, or maybe Hamas has just gotten really good about picking out leaders and focusing their fire.
Well, I mean, there's definitely video out there of some strikes on IDF from snipers, from anti-tank attacks. I mean, there's quite a bit out there already. So,
and also considered that the numbers are all over the place, but essentially because you're going into a place where the IDF is not going to find anybody that loves them, even the guy who's trying to just get the fuck out of the way hates them, they're technically outnumbered. So Hamas can call on a pretty effective intel network. I'm sure they're having their version of see something, say something going on right now. And the guy in the third window from the left on the fourth floor of whatever shithole building he lives in over there calls up and says, "Hey, I see a tank on 4th Street." That probably enables Hamas to do something.
I mean, I would also, venture to say, like, look at the nature of this fighting. I mean, this is intensive urban combat. I mean, of the likes that we haven't seen for in a long time. So it's pretty fair assumption to say that there's probably ample opportunity for snipers to target discriminate if you're defending like Hamas is in an environment like that, in that heavy urban setting. So,
yeah, if we're looking for parallels, the most recent one I can come up with is the siege of Sarajevo during the Balkan Wars.
Yeah, artillery and snipers.
Yeah, I mean, it's focused down to a nasty thing. We all know that in urban warfare, when the buildings start to get destroyed, it actually gives cover. It might destroy one enemy position, but it also gives them another position to fight from. And when a building collapses, suddenly your main boulevard now is blocked by the repercussions of the building being collapsed. And then the force you're fighting against now has a different defensive position. So as you solve one problem, you create another. The other thing is, and we kind of talked about this on our last stream, is clearly the IDF is gotten complacent. And while it would appear there are some lessons being learned, and probably some of the old guys coming back on, hey, I remember how we used to do this. Filtering that through the whole force quickly is not going to happen.
Anybody else got anything on this? When we move on to something else, kind of going around the world here.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up kind of just as the information is flowing and we're seeing everything kind of unfold. We're seeing that Netanyahu is not bullshitting when he was saying that the Israelis were going to take control of Gaza after the conflict was over. And as we're seeing now, they're telling the guys, the Gazans in the south, to go south into somewhere. And their plan is to essentially push the Gazans out of Gaza. And damn the hostages, damn the civilians, whatever. The objective now is to Gaza. And if they destroy the entire city, no matter what the IDF losses are, then they'll reach their objective of making sure that even if there are Gazans left, that they don't have a home to go back to. And everybody knows, probably even Netanyahu knows, you can't destroy Hamas. Hamas is an idea. Hamas is recreated every single time that you kill a Palestinian family. You create like 200 more Hamas dudes. And really, the destruction of Hamas is never going to happen in that vacuum.
The destruction of Hamas as an organization, no, that was like us trying to destroy the Communist Office of South Vietnam during the Vietnam War. Destroying Hamas as an effective force, that is an achievable goal. Because one thing that has struck me interesting about this whole conflict since the 7th of October is Hezbollah's inaction. They keep saying, we'll do something if you, but they don't. And I found that interesting. And my assumption, for what that's worth, is that whatever the Israelis are doing to Hamas, it's effective. Because if it wasn't, Hezbollah would pile on. There's no reason for them not to.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my question to you, Les, and to you, Logan. But Logan, I'd like to hear your opinion on why Hezbollah hasn't moved.
As far as I know, there was a meeting with the Iranian officials I think probably the first couple of weeks of this conflict. And they were assured by the IRGC, who basically is the handler of Hezbollah, and that they would not engage in any conflict with Israel if nothing was touched in Iran. Because really, Hezbollah is an extension of IRGC. And does Iran care if Gaza gets leveled? Not really. It doesn't really affect what's their operations, their operational goals. They're a lot more successful in other areas of the Middle East as far as like their advise and assist operations. And for right now, they know that this is tying down the IDF, and that's actually a good thing for Iran. And it's also tying down other Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, who have to deal with other asymmetric threats from Yemen and the Houthis that occupy that area. And as far as I can tell, there's been, pot shots taken back and forth, and some Israeli guys have got nuked in their vehicles a couple of times, and they shot some artillery back at Hezbollah. But I mean, I don't think that anything is going to happen unless somebody touches Persian interests. And I actually have a contact within that country that told me, hey, just so you know, anything happens, like he's like, hey, I'm concerned about our countries going to war with each other. And he's like, don't worry. We're not going to do anything. Like, we're trying to stay out of this as much as possible. And he's a military guy too. So hopefully nothing happens on that end, because that definitely will escalate the conflict to a global one.
Yeah, that's a good point there, Logan. And I kind of think that's why the Iranians are using the Houthis as a proxy to engage in commerce war, because that's essentially what they're doing. They've taken 2 ships offline. There's a historical precedent for hurting Israel by closing the Bab el-Mandab. The Egyptians did it in 1970 with their destroyers that the Israelis couldn't reach, and it was a very effective tactic. And you could see this continue. A few more ships get grabbed. The cool thing about it is leaves us a way to retaliate too, because if they start messing with too many ships there off the coast of Yemen, we can go grab Iranian ships all around the world, because they're not going to do anything if we grab one in the Straits of Malacca or we get one off the coast of South America. Yes, the Iranians are in South America. So it could be bringing back the old commerce war back from the 1700s.
Now, I got a question about these ships getting seized. So, when was it? Several years back, when Somalis were raiding a bunch of ships, there were contractors jumping on. Like, these shipping companies were hiring military contractors to man the ships armed. Did that just go away? I can't imagine those waters got any safer.
It was an absolute disaster.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Blackwater went as far as buying their own ship, calling it the MacArthur, and providing an afloat thing. The problem you had was the crews themselves and their weapons when the ships would pull into port. Because technically, when an aircraft or a ship pulls into port, you're immediately under that country's laws and you have to comply. And while you might be fine at the port you left from, but any port you pull into, you could have problems. And that includes even if you have to do an emergency divert into a port because, the guy's got an appendix. We got to get him off the ship right now. So we're going to hit this close port, or we hit a rock and we got damage and we got to go fix it. All the weapons on the ship now become a diplomatic incident. And so having armed naval parties on civilian ships is a massive problem. And if you look back in the 80s, when we had the Persian Gulf escort service going on, have a date with Destiny. Even then, we escorted the reflag tankers, but we never put our people on board because it also creates a massive insurance problem. Because once you put a naval party on board a civilian ship, that ship then becomes a legitimate military target.
Yeah, and it's a logistical nightmare, Les. Like you said, the carrying of weapons on the ship, insurance liability, engage with pirates or something like that. Their maritime laws sometimes prohibit them from even doing something like that. So when they're boarded by country, police, whatever, they're going to be investigated for engaging in, I don't know, like armed resistance. I don't know what the law is, but they're literally throwing their AKs and their AR-15s, whatever they got, over the side, machine guns, into the water, just wasting them.
Yeah, there's two different problems there. One, you have maritime law, which in a way works towards the defense of the ship. And I'll use Greenpeace as an example. You remember back in the 80s, it was real popular for Greenpeace to get on a ship. The guy would chain himself to the harpoon gun.
Yeah.
Never happened, but it's perfectly legal if the captain walked right up, put a pistol to the guy's head, and blew his brains out because he was repelling boarders. Perfectly legal. Would have stood up in any court.
Mm-hmm.
The problem you have with that is, let's take an example of this ship in right now, the Galaxy Leader. Okay, those are apparently not pirates. They were part of the official government, such that there is in Yemen. And if, say, that's a U.S.-based crew and they do it, now technically the United States and Yemen are at war. So there's the legal level, which is pretty cut and dried. Then you have the diplomatic level that changes everything. And especially ship registries, man, talk about a convoluted thing. It's an Israeli company that owns a British flagship which country has jurisdiction here. Clearly the Yemenis think it's an Israeli problem. But does Britain want to go out on a limb? Because I'm sure there's a Royal Navy ship somewhat near there. Japan has ships in the Gulf for anti-piracy. Do they want to go take action? Is it their responsibility? You know, each of those governments have a heck of a problem on their hands.
What were the crew? What's their
Bulgarian?
And also, I mean, I don't know if you guys have been part of a PMC, but I was in a PMC, like a really high level one, like doing like tier something domestic, DT shit in the United States. But they went through the same life cycle that every PMC goes through. You start out with like guys who are literally like, my boss was, squadron commander, Delta Force. My direct boss was Sergeant Major, Delta Force. And all the other guys that were in the company were like, support activity guys, Task Force Orange, some kind of whatever. But over time, over just a year, the money rolls up, and you end up with guys that are way less qualified being brought on board. And every PMC goes through that. So I'm sure they started out with like Navy SEALs on the ships, you know what I mean? Or something like that, or Marines. And then at the end, they ended up with like, Alabama State Troopers. That's just the way it goes, because the bottom line is what happens,
Even still, though, I would think that, an Alabama State Trooper, who I know one, and he's pretty freaking squared away, retired. But I'm assuming that dude would probably still be better trained at slaying bodies than a Yemenis fucking dude riding in.
From what I saw, those guys were actually pretty damn good. There was a couple of times where they're like flagging each other, but as far as like coordination, like those guys, I mean, the Houthis are like, I would say that they're like the best desert fighters in the world. They're not like the best like convoy raiders, but I mean, they had their shit together. That approach for the helicopter is impressive. Just the helicopter operation.
I mean, look at the video they put out. That was some pretty brazen shit, and a certain level of production with that camera based on the tail boom, catching the flag painted on the backside of the helo, coming in. Give them credits for good production.
They're pretty, man. Yeah, they're really good at PR, honestly. But it's just the same. It's the same like with the Ukrainian, like the Foreign Legion in Ukraine. I mean, they started out with SF dudes. There's a bunch of shitheads too, but I mean, they had some pretty high quality guys at the beginning of the war, and they're still there. But over time, those guys made their own, special units, and the guys that were left were the shitheads, and they're like, man, how are we going to fill this battalion up? And I mean, they basically just brought in like a whole favela of Brazilians and Colombians, born to sit, paid to kill, and they're having a hard time. So, I mean, you just have to think about like the life cycle of like, I don't want to say mercenaries, but like guns for hire. That's the way it is always going to be, probably since the beginning of time.
Well, that's true. You bring up a good point, because we all look back in history of the Congo and stuff and think about 5, 6, and 10 Commando and the interesting figures that led them. Those were also unusually long-lived cohesive units. They kind of set a standard that's really never been met since then.
Well, do we have any other domestic issues going on other than all these fucking rallies?
People want to talk about the draft, but I haven't really heard anything other than, I mean, the Army can't fucking recruit worth shit.
I can't see a draft.
Well, they can go ask Ellen and her 2 moms. I'm sure she can get some people to come.
I did see it. There was a change in the past couple of months about the recruiting advertisements, and we went from like the 2 moms thing and like the pansexual shit, and it's now transitioned to military age white male centric advertising.
Yeah, it looks like 1990s, 1980s.
Yeah.
Oh, they literally brought back "Be All You Can Be."
Be all you can be, right? Be all you can be.
I think too little, too late.
Or
I mean,
as we
I
normally
like it.
say, because that's all you can be.
Yeah, Yeah.
I mean, people saw that and they're like, "Hey, the World War III is coming now. We know it."
Yeah. I mean,
that's a recruiting drive right before shit goes down, right?
Yeah, exactly.
At least it's not an army of
no.
one.
I mean, they're having trouble making numbers for a variety of reasons that we could probably fill up an entire show with. But they've got to get people in there because you have to have a certain amount of manning. And over the last few decades, we've let the military get ridiculously small. I mean, hell, it would take literally everybody in uniform to recreate Desert Storm right now. So yeah, the loss of one soldier now is equivalent of 3 or 4 2 decades ago. So they've got to do whatever they can do. I've already heard that they're starting to reduce certain PT standards, like the run is now 22 minutes instead of 15. And I'm sure there's probably other stuff that hasn't even made the news. And I'm sure if you walk into Recruiter and I've experimented with drugs 300 times, I'm sure there's a waiver for that.
Yeah, do you guys remember the surge, 2006, 2007? Man, they were letting the best of the best in, dude. I remember that.
Also, I think part of the military recruiting problem is something more existential. And it actually speaks well of us as a society. You know, definitely parents of my generation, like my parents being in and stuff, that was an improvement in their life. That there was a big portion of American society, Vietnam War and prior, that joining the military was a step up in life for you. You were improving yourself, and like now that's not necessarily true. And that's a good thing because that means we've established a middle class that's doing really well and it's taking care of its children. It sends them to college. Not that that means anything anymore, but it did at one time. And so there's not a lot of advantage other than pure patriotism or the challenge to join the military right now because you're probably not improving your lot in life. And if you're in that small segment of America where that would improve your life, either dirt poor backcountry living or horrible inner city living, you probably have something wrong with you that would prevent you from getting into the military, either a civil problem or a physical problem. So right now, just as a general whole, joining the military is not a way to better your life.
Yeah, but our belligerents don't have that problem right now. And that's why Russia and other countries that are against us, they don't have that problem because it is exactly that. They were criminals with nowhere to go, no life goals, nothing, no future, living in these shit villages out in the middle of nowhere in Siberia. Now all of a sudden they got a new car, their parents have money, that's their recruiting goals are like massive right now. And we're struggling in the West to fill our freaking normal, TOAs. Like, I don't see how that's going to be sustainable in the long run, especially if we have to do any interventions in the future.
Well, what do you got, John?
Nothing that y'all hadn't already said.
What?
I don't know. It's hard to. I think it's like y'all said. It's a combination of a whole lot of things, and I'll be honest. There's not a whole lot of incentives right now to go join, especially given the current administration. I mean, if I were younger, I would be thinking real hard about whether I actually wanted to or not, because I wouldn't see it as signing up for the same things that I signed up for back when I did, 30 plus years ago. So I don't know. It's just a different environment, maybe.
Well, that's there's a lot of reasons. John, you're hitting on something really good there. Is the threats not being articulated as well? I mean, growing up in our time, we knew it was the dirty, rotten Russians, the Warsaw Pact. We knew what there was. We had to keep them from coming through the Fulda Gap. We had to keep them out of the Pacific. We had to keep the Chinese ashore. It was very defined what we had to do to win. There was a strategy. Ronald Reagan laid it out. He was going to defeat the Soviet Union, however it took. And back then, whatever administration was in power, there wasn't any doubt about that. The Russians were the bad guys, or the Soviets back then. Let's have a distinction. The Soviets were the bad guys. Communism was evil. Democrat and Republican could agree on that without issue. Now we don't.
I don't know, Les, because what I'm going to say about that is I'm looking at the gentleman below me, the gentleman in the middle, and the gentleman underneath on the very bottom. We all joined in that time frame where the Soviet Union had collapsed, post Desert Storm, before 9/11, and there was no defined enemy. And I don't remember these enlistment numbers being an issue during that time frame.
There was enlistment struggles back then. Back when Krulak was commandant, back in the late 90s, he was strutting around Washington going, I'm the only guy making numbers. The Navy and the Air Force and the Army had numbers problems back in the 90s. Hell, I remember back in the mid-90s, the National Guard had problems getting people. So we've encountered this problem before. But back then there was still a vague thing. We still kind of didn't trust the commies back then. But the threat is less defined now. I think that's a big problem of it. And when I say less defined, society, American society doesn't go, that's the bad guy. We all agree that's the bad guy. We don't agree on that right now. I mean, look at these shitheads on these students on these things protesting on behalf of Hamas. I mean, I'm sorry. You cannot defend an organization that flew into a concert and mowed down 300 people that were listening to a concert. And I freely admit that had that been they flew into an Israeli Air Force base and cut down a squadron's worth of people, I'd have been like, wow, that's a fucking innovative fucking raid. But no, that was just straight up fucking murder. Nothing more, nothing less. And they're hiding behind babies as hostages. We've just seen like a 4-year-old release. And we hear that there's rumor, I don't know if it's true or not, that they have one that's just a couple months old and stuff. You're a chicken shit fucking coward if you have to hide behind a kid to keep me from killing you.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on a good point, Les. I think the biggest thing is unity, right? America isn't really unified. And it doesn't go down to the individual level where it's my civic responsibility to fill that role. You know what I mean? Like there's no call to action to do your service for your country because that's what your country needs. So as a good American, I'm going to shoulder that yoke and pull that load because we're all pulling in the same direction. We want what's best for America. I don't think that's as clear as it ever was, as it was in the past. And I mean, right now I see a lot of guys are just like, nah, this thing's done. I'm just going to phone it in, let it rot. That's where we're at, I think.
Well, even from a political standpoint, like I haven't ever encouraged my sons, and it's only been in the past, 4 years or so that they've hit the age to be, where they could go. I haven't encouraged them to go because honestly, I didn't want them to because I was really concerned about multiple things, not the least of which, are they going to get sent somewhere to be stuck in the middle of something that we have no business being involved in, that's just purely a political thing without an actual righteous cause behind it? Or are they actually going to be taken care of? I mean, let's be honest, we've had a very bad propensity in the last 4+ years of not exactly doing the best of taking care of the folks in there. Just look at the absolute disgrace and debacle that information has slowly trickled out about from the Afghanistan withdrawal. I mean, when you've got people on the ground with bad guys in their sights and confirming these are bad guys and being told, no, don't do anything to them. And then later on, those same bad guys kill a bunch of people. Oh, well, I have a hard time encouraging my kids to get involved with something like that. But that's just me.
Yeah, there's very low institutional trust, and it doesn't seem like they're doing themselves any favors if they even care at this point. I mean, it almost feels like it's self-destruction.
We need to get some of those good PR companies out there with those recruiting videos because I wanted to slay fucking dragons back when I joined.
Well, man, you just hit on one. There, I saw the dumbest ad a couple years ago for the Navy. You know, a global force for good, and then these red pins are appearing on the map, and I'm like, so our enemy is a red pin?
I mean, that's a problem.
Say, back when I joined in the mid '90s and shit, goddamn, the Marine Corps had some fucking fantastic goddamn videos.
We did.
You're welcome.
Playing dragons and fire going around and
The
dudes coming
one.
up with fucking swords and goddamn. Even though the poster of the Marine who ended up getting out, he was all moated like a recon fucking warrior. It was fucking fantastic. Showing you that video of just blowing shit up, I'm like, that's the job I want. You know, it fucking fantastic. But also, I got to agree with you guys. And I live in a military town, and it, even though it's real big around here, I think the patriotism and things of that nature right now, with a lot of just the way that society is, and you know, I'm gonna say it's all this shit that's on this thing too has a big thing to play with it too. But I think there's still good men and women out there that want to serve and want to burden that and be up there and wearing the nation's cloth and all that. And you know, in between wars, it goes down, and I hate to say it, sometimes it takes a bad thing for, you know, it to happen again, and I don't want to see that. But I think what John was saying too with Afghanistan and seeing some of the shit storms that have been going on lately, and watching it on other people's shores too has a thing. But they got to do something because numbers are way down. Quotas aren't being made in the reserves or active duty, and we always need men and women to serve.
I mean, Americans love a winner. I mean, that's why everybody loves to watch football and stuff like that. And they need a goal. And when I came in, we had that goal. We had that enemy, so to speak. Nowadays, like you said, it's not really there. And I mean, that's parallels to a country that's literally at war right now, Ukraine. Okay. It just came out yesterday. One of the deputies of their national Congress basically came out on behest of the ruling party, Zelensky's party, that the general in charge, Zaluzhny, doesn't have a fucking op plan for the following year, for after the winter. And of course, that was like a huge like counterintelligence issue that she came out and did this. But also, like, I was more concerned, like, how could he be so inept that there's no op plan for, you know, the following year? Like, there's no goal. There's no operational goal to win. And that's what people are seeing right now, even with the U.S. Army. They're like, who's the enemy? What's the goal? Like when we were in Afghanistan, Iraq, we know who the enemy is. Haji's over there trying to kill us, but that's a reactionary thing. It wasn't like actually like these like formations of people that we need to go out and find and kill. And that's not the enemy that people want. And so, of course, in Ukraine, they're having like huge issues with with finding guys they need 20,000 guys a month to join their army to just maintain. And now that it's come out that there's literally no operational goal for victory for the Ukrainian war is a huge problem. And we're probably going to see within the next week, Lloyd Austin went to go visit Kyiv a week and a half ago. And shortly after that, Zelensky started dumping the deputy ministers of their National Guard. He dumped the general. He's probably going to dump some more generals. He's going to consolidate power, and after he does that, he's going to make a huge mobilization because they have to. They have to bring the students
just
in.
like
They have to
Lincoln
bring
did.
in. Yep. He's going to bring in more. He's going to open it up again. Like there's going to be more foreign, more incentives for foreigners to come. You're not going to have the exemptions as a student. He's even preparing. There's two things that he was preparing, preparing the populace for domestically, was using the European Union and the officials in the European Union and possibly the United States to grab coward assholes that ran off at the beginning of the war and literally deport their asses back to Ukraine and shove them in the fucking trench, which they should anyways. But that, and then also he came out 2 weeks ago and started talking about Maidan 3, if anybody heard about that. And that was to basically prepare the populace to say, once I make these moves and get rid of all these dudes that could possibly make a coup against me and make some unpopular decisions that need to happen, honestly, that there's not going to be a danger of, the traditional thing of Ukrainians going to Maidan and creating another revolution. And so he said that any revolution that happens basically is a information subversive operation by the SVR, and that he's kind of like normalizing that so that if it does happen, that there's an excuse to crack down. And of course, if he has control of the National Guard, which is the internal security force of Ukraine, that they'll actually be nothing. They'll be a nothing burger anyways.
If we could rewind for a second, Logan, the lack of a plan. It seemed to me for like the last year, they were doing shaping operations to get Crimea back.
That's what I thought too. And we heard from an article, I think it was Rolling Stone or something. Zaluzhny gave an interview saying, the operational goal for any future offenses would be to cut off Crimea from the land bridge to Crimea by assaulting towards the Azov Sea. And that didn't happen, obviously. And they were successful at taking away any maritime supply routes and messing with the bridge in Kerch a bunch of times. But as far as getting their forces across Kherson or Zaporizhia Oblast and actually closing that land bridge off, they were unsuccessful. And they did do some shaping up, but they caused enough damage to where the Russians had to build a brand new rail system over that land bridge through Zaporizhia from Donetsk into Crimea, because they couldn't get shit in through the ports and they couldn't get anything across the Kerch Bridge anymore. So they had to bring it by rail. As far as operational plan, that was it. And when that was over, I mean, even Kirill, I'm not going to speak for the head of GUR, but he hasn't came out and said anything different. Usually he comes out and says, if there's a policy change or something he wants to confirm that's happening from the Ukrainian Armed Forces, ESU, then he'll come out and make a statement about it, or operational goals for his organization, but there hasn't been anything. So there's really, this whole thing is a conflict between Zaluzhny and Zelensky. They've been fucking each other over for the past year. And this was an opportunity for Zelensky to send out this lady who's basically a congresswoman, senator, to politically assassinate him so that he does have a reason to get rid of him. That's my opinion.
Now you guys are saying that the winter's coming, and we just say 10-foot drifts and whatnot. I know you got a lot of freaking gear guys in here. Talk about that. What with the winter coming in, their gear and all. We talk about their weapons and all. Who's supplying all the damn actual gear that the grunts are using? Are they just out there in goddamn summer and just trying to maintain, or
self, dude?
Or are they
self? Honestly, it's like I would say the government relies too much on mom and pop volunteers. And they have, and it was a imperative at the beginning. Everybody wants to take care of it. It's almost like if you can think about it, a neo-feudalistic situation where your son or husband got mobilized or they volunteered, and maybe they're 1 out of 10 men in the they're 1 out of 10 men from the village, and they all pull the village money together and they all buy Papa a casque or a gilet, their vests, uniforms, whatever. And that works for a while, but once you got a 1 million man army, that doesn't work anymore. And you see guys, they're suffering, dude. The winter, if you go look at videos of this last weekend, it was terrible, dude. It looked like North Dakota. That was the winds were probably 40 miles an hour. There was snow drifts 10, 20 feet. If you look at, there was memes today. I actually posted one too. It was basically there's these little creatures that basically enlist something that happens to the Russians, the shark or something. When the shark ate the dude, they put a Ukrainian uniform on the shark, they did the same thing for this storm, because the storm came in and like basically wiped the logistic nodes out for Russia, and everything like in Crimea was shut down. Like there's like, if you look at Sochi, if you look at Crimea, it's like basically like tidal waves, frozen tidal waves coming in. And the Russians are, I would say, even more ill prepared than the Ukrainians are, as far as like having equipment, and especially like winter gear. The Ukrainians have got a lot better. Like when I first got there, you know, some of their domestic produced companies for equipment were kind of like, I don't know, John can probably look back and see this too, and see that a lot of the shit like was like really like bad. Like if you went to wish.com and like wanted to get some like first spear shit, and it was really bad. But now, I mean, these guys are producing like it's not knockoff, but like they're basically taking designs from like Faro, Spirit Systems, and like making their own gear, or like their own domestic gear. And it's expensive. Like I went to go buy a pair of pants at like Militarist, and you know, you go and buy Cries for like, you know, $300, and these pants are pretty much the same as Cries, maybe not as good as material, but they're $100, and that's a lot for a Ukrainian dude. I mean, these guys make $700 a month. So, I mean, they got to pay all this money, and they still got to equip themselves. And unless they want some knockoff shit from, you know, 90s. I still see guys in 90s camo. I still see guys in like Ukrainian 1990s like field jackets, like with the urban camo. You know what I'm talking about? Like the old school. Yeah, it's a lot better now. But the Russians, I really thought that like their Ratnik stuff was going to be badass, but it wasn't. It wasn't really anything. It's plastic Chinese shit.
What else we got?
Well, conversing on domestic issues a little bit, what do you guys think about these Republican debates?
Ooh, there you go. Well, my 2 cents on that is fucking Larry Elder dropped out, which he was fucked over by the RNC. Go figure. But that was my guy.
Yeah, that was my guy too, and it's a damn shame. But I you see the field's getting smaller, and people are talking like, "Hey, you think somebody who might come in on the last one and jump in?" I don't know. We'll see, but more and more are you know, as it gets smaller and smaller, you picking one, you know, better topics that they can talk about and stuff. But it's going to get interesting. It's starting to get the ball rolling.
I mean, basically, it's like basically just the competition to see who's going to be Trump's vice president, in my opinion, right? And
Trump's over 60% now. I mean, that's insurmountable.
It's interesting, you know. I used to have hesitancy with this Vivek guy, but the more I hear him talk, the better he sounds. And some of the other guys, like DeSantis and stuff, some stuff has come out that I'm a little bit less interested in him.
Vivek says all the right things, and that's what scares me about him.
Yeah, but
I want to like him.
Yeah,
but
I know what you mean.
That spider sense, I've been burnt too many times in the past, and my spider sense just keeps tingling. I'm like,
but who is he? I mean, really, who the hell is this?
Yeah, you know, exactly.
It true, it probably is.
Kind of like a Republican Obama. That's the scare, right? That's the fear, right? That he could be a Republican Obama, and that he comes out of nowhere, he says all the right things, and then, you know, you see all the stuff like candidate Obama versus President Obama, you know, two different people type thing. So,
yeah, he's kind of pulling a playbook, pulling from the playbook of Trump. You know, like you said, he's kind of a nobody, but he is an outsider to Washington, so he's kind of playing that card pretty heavy. I think he's really running for the vice president. As somebody already mentioned, that, you know, he's really running for that. But I'm gonna give my 2 cents on the debates themselves. You know, these people really need to understand what the winning issue is. And unfortunately, the average American really doesn't understand politics. In every one of these debates, every candidate falls in the trap of addressing the question that's asked of them, whether it be about economics, policy, whatever. I say, fuck no. You manipulate that answer to a statement winning about the winning issue. And the winning issue for the conservatives is the transing of the kids. That's what won in Virginia. That's what's going to win everything. That's what got DeSantis so popular in the first place, is taking on the trans agenda. And that's rarely been mentioned in these debates. So they really need to go back to that issue. That's what's going to win. That's why, we've seceded some ground in these recent elections and stuff like that. So,
I mean, but think about, like, has anybody heard from fucking Kamala Harris in like a year? Like, who the fuck cares who the vice president is? I think what we need to look at is like how they're going to do this next election. It's not going to be about edging out Trump. It's going to be about, basically, they've already kind of, like, from what I've seen, created a literal uniparty with RFK. And so RFK is going to come out and say all the right things, like you said. And he's already come out and said, I'm going to bring all the best ideas from both sides of the aisle. And all these people are lining up behind him and saying the same thing, like, oh, we really need somebody that's both Republican and Democrat. And it's really just, he's just the uniparty dude now. And now what's the choice? Uniparty or uniparty blue, uniparty red? It's just like, it's masturbatory to me.
Well, that's just the nature of our politics. That's not going to change anytime soon, though.
Yeah, but it's not like a Ross Perot situation. It's totally different. You guys remember the 90s. That was a little bit different situation.
I'm scared that the issue is going to come down, not necessarily to, as Chad said, the trans kids and all that. I think it's going to come down like it did in Virginia. What got Virginia is was this abortion. That's what really turned the tide here in the Commonwealth. And they're going to have to deal with that too, even though it should be the states who make the decisions and all that. That was a big thing. But like Governor Youngkin did when he came out against the schools and said, look, now that we've seen what's going on in there, it was a huge, huge issue, and they need to stay on it. But, the network TVs, they're not trying to lose vote. They want to wait to the end and see if somebody jumps on that sword, and I don't know if they're willing to do it at the debates.
Another problem they've got to deal with on the other side too is they've created this Frankenstein monster with the 20-year-olds and the young college-age leftists, so on and so forth, and they don't want any compromise. They don't want someone like RFK bringing the best of both sides. They don't want anything with the other side. They want it even further left than it is now, to an extreme level, which is why I will be highly surprised if come October of next year, I'll be highly surprised if you still see the Biden-Harris ticket as the one that's running on the other side. I'm very strongly entertaining the idea that you could honestly see something like a Newsom-Whitmer ticket popping up out of nowhere, because that's who they really want. And both of them have been doing a lot of little things off to the side quietly lately to garner up support and get their names out there in the public eye. Yeah. So
that's been the crazy thing is it's foreign support. It's not domestic support. It's foreign support from China, literally.
Yeah, China really has infiltrated a lot of our institutions, private and public sector.
I mean, Biden went for a long time. He was like, who wants to meet with Xi Jinping? Nobody wants to meet with that asshole. And then he's competing with Gavin Newsom. And he still didn't get a freaking meeting with him until Gavin Newsom got one. I mean, think about it.
Yeah, my thing is, I think Chad brought it up. Dude, we have not fared. That's a red star cluster, dude. Especially right now with this administration, like we should be crushing them, but we're not. And Vivek, on that last debate, man, he's pretty blunt. He said it pretty good, dude. We got some fucking piss poor leadership in there that are failing us. right? They're not performing, and they need to step aside, but they're not, and no one's calling for them to step aside or demanding them to step aside, I should say. And man, I don't have a good outlook, right? I keep seeing all these polls that are saying, Trump's leading Biden in these swing states and stuff like that. And I don't believe it. I don't freaking believe it because there's so much hatred of Trump on both sides, man. I know a bunch of Republicans that are anti-Trump. So
they can make the votes whatever they want now. So I mean, it's kind of it's really going to be who's running that, which faction in DC is going to be running those numbers. That's all.
Another thing I want to throw out there is, our side likes to yell about election interference, and election interference, yes, right? They're bringing all these cases against Trump. It's blatant. It's clear as day. No one's doing anything about it. That's ridiculous. But the fraud, right? That was at 2020. It was all fraud. Well, what has been done to address any of that? Nothing. From what I've seen, has there been any steps that have been taken to address said fraud? So to me, it's either two COAs here. One, it's bullshit. It was just an excuse for Trump's failure, right? Because nothing has been done to correct that problem. Or two, the fraud hasn't been addressed, and it's going to happen again. So
yeah,
neither of those
absolutely.
Neither of those are good outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. To your point, I remember when they were saying the Al Gore George Bush Jr. election, right? That was a big George Bush Jr. stole it, blah blah blah, and then Trump stole it. Oh my God, election fraud! Trump stole it, and now the Republicans are saying so. Both sides, this should be something everybody should be able to agree on. Let's audit the freaking voting system. Let's freaking everyone get behind this. Make sure we're confident in our systems, so we don't have to say, "Oh, it's fraud."
Let's see what happens every election is they go out, the left goes out, they harvest ballots, which is perfectly legal in some states, right? They go to, they get a bunch of homeless or whatever, and hey, vote for our guy and I'll give you fucking XYZ. They harvest all these ballots and they're getting all these shitbags to vote for their side. And they do it early. They do all this early voting. Our side's like, oh, we're gonna vote on election day. And then election day comes and goes, and it's like, oh yes, this came up. I couldn't make it down there. So our side gets it. They suck. We are the kings of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, man.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm in the camp that I think it took place and hasn't been addressed, and we're going to see it again because I'm just not convinced at this point that we're going to be able to vote our way out of it regardless. And I know it's a bit pessimistic, but I'm also a bit of a realist in that regards too. So
I got high hopes, though.
and I hope you have high hopes for both of us, brother.
I'll prepare.
Yeah, who's got 30 votes within arm's reach?
Hey, I've been waiting to bring this up all damn night. Did y'all see the video of the Marines on the birthday out in town and the dudes trying to fight their asses and it turned south on them? Not the Marines, on the other guys.
What 123 Marines, Chad? I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, what's to be expected, man?
Yeah.
It looks like they went outside and they were trying to hey, they're all decked out in their blues and shit. It's the birthday. And I think the other side, the civilians, they punched one of these corporals or lance coolies in the face, and goddamn, it was on. And PD tried to run in there, but you could tell it kind of weighted him. And there was a few blows thrown, and I was like, yeah, damn, it was making the rounds all over social media. I was like, well, I'm sure Brent and them's going to talk about that.
Tell you what, once you get that tan McMath belt, man, you're forced to be reckoned with.
When I saw the Austin the Austin troopers jumping in, or the DPS troopers, I was like, those have got to be 123 Marines. And it was Weapons Company.
Yeah. There was some 1-back, 2-back going on, and they waited till the guy swung first too. And one devil dog just ran up in there, took a few, and just kept on going. And I know some trousers had to get replaced the next day.
Winning bars fights in 1775, brother.
Yeah. All right. We got 15 marks, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. I'm going to start going around the horn. Start with Les and close the panel. Final odds. You guys know the drill. Get the con.
All right. So all over the place tonight. Good general subject topics tossed. My prediction for the future here is that we are going to see more of these naval attacks until they get answered. Because right now, all these attacks have essentially gone unanswered, and be interesting to see what that answer will be, and interesting to see what the escalation from the answer will be. As for the upcoming election, I make the following prediction: it will be stupid. Whichever side wins, the other side will scream it was unfair. People will act stupid. There'll be all kinds of stupidness all around the country, and we're not going to know who won for a very long time.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Les. I think it's going to be stupid regardless of how it goes. So plan accordingly. I think the next 8-10 months is going to be kind of like that old Chinese curse of living in interesting times.
I just want to throw out there for those of you that don't know, John's been holding streams on Tuesday nights, so be on the lookout for that.
Yes. Been trying to do that on Tuesday nights.
All right. So good conversation tonight. A lot was discussed. A lot going on in the foreign scene. My focus has mainly been on primarily domestic crap that's been going on. But Les, you're right about the elections. Good call, brother. I wanted to end, though, with something a little different, more of a general appeal to the audience and my fellow panel members as well. Some of you may know, some of you may not know, I'm currently working on a PhD in history, and my focus for my dissertation will be on the Vietnam War, particularly the effectiveness of American counterinsurgency at the tactical level. While I'm still about a year and a half away from starting my dissertation, I'm still in the bullshit courses before actually getting to the good stuff. But I've been doing some research and preparation. So I'm appealing to the audience and my fellow panel members, as I said, looking for anyone out there who is a Vietnam War veteran or who knows anyone who served in country, particularly in the infantry or as a field medic, Navy corpsman, or in special forces. I need someone who's willing to discuss their experiences, beginning with the training and going into actual combat. I'm a combat vet myself. I know these things can be challenging to talk about for some people, but I'm not looking for details about specific traumatic events. More so looking on the individual's analysis over the effectiveness of American tactics. So if you in the audience or anyone on the panel, knows anybody, might be interested, please reach out to me. You can reach me in the comments or via email. The address is vietnamwarresearch@outlook.com. Again, that's Vietnam War Research, all one word, @outlook.com. This is for legitimate academic research. I have no aspirations to teach, but I'm pursuing a PhD. More of this credential so I can contribute to scholarly enterprises with the intent on changing military doctrine and political policy. My hope is not only just solving the American defeat in Vietnam, but I put that in quotes because that's still a hotly debated topic in academia, but I really want to change how we approach insurgency. So your help is appreciated. Rant over.
I can't wait till you graduate. Then when you and Doc are on here, I can be like, Doctor.
Yeah, if you guys can reach out to Chad and help him out there. And hey, good discussion today. All over the spectrum. I don't have no words of wisdom. Can't wait for the next one. It's getting wintertime, so if you can get out there and train in that cold, you can. If you're a hunter, get out there and get you a deer.
So yeah, I think we're in the fourth turning. Things are going to get worse before they get a lot better. Just put prepare for this continual downward progression in our society and try to plan accordingly and prepare accordingly. I do, on the upside note, I do have some new stuff coming out in a little bit here, bringing on some pretty exciting new equipment. So I'll be able to be producing some more things in-house, and I'll have better control over my production and my costs and my designs. So prepare yourselves for some pretty exciting stuff.
We see that sexy Yugo M53 in the background there.
Yeah. That's it. And that's one of the prototype carry handles on it before I punch those out to the mainstream.
Hey, Brent, guys, thanks for having me on again. I think with everything that's happening right now, domestically, foreign, international relations, wars, everything that's going on right now, it's really going to get pushed to finish and conclude itself by all the parties within the next year, because Biden doesn't want any of these things happening, the Israeli situation, Ukraine, nothing like that, to happen and not be resolved before Election Day. So we're probably going to see some sort of negotiation start, probably on the Paris, like the Paris template. China situation is going to continue to escalate. And these elections are very important to us, but our adversaries are looking much further out. They're looking at the horizon. They're looking at 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, and we're stuck looking at the 4-year mark. As far as things I got coming up, I'm getting closer and closer to going back. So you guys give me some support on my Instagram. I'm sending stuff over there to the guys. If you can assist in helping out units over there, that would be greatly appreciated. If anybody wants to support or is interested in joining, self-deploying, just let me know. Hit me up on my Instagram DMs. Thanks.
All right, guys. I appreciate all my guests jumping on. I had some blasts from the past. All right, we had John. We haven't had him on in a long time. Had Mike on and Chad jumping on, and those guys haven't been on too many live streams lately, on here at least. So I appreciate those guys making it on tonight. So as far as my channel's coming up, I got a outstanding interview with warfighters. Did with John's uncle. He was a LERP in Vietnam. So Chad, you can take some copious notes on this one. But that guy was awesome. So I just got to sit down. I've been out of pocket. I've been up with Grunt Mountains in Northern California in the SERE Challenge, and that's pretty freaking awesome. If you guys haven't seen it yet, go over to the SERE Challenge YouTube channel. Grunt Proof has moved all his stuff pertaining to the SERE Challenge over to a brand new YouTube channel called the SERE Challenge, and you can see the Season 3 trailer. He just released it yesterday, and it's pretty cool. But it'll give you a glimpse of what is involved with Season 3. So that stuff's all come down the pipe, and I think it's been a pretty good stream. Had a great conversation, guys. Anybody have any save rounds?
Let's go, Brandon.
I was waiting for it. Don't forget, guys, freaking Cyber Monday. So there's plenty of deals out there for AR-15s and associated accessories. Right? Nobody else?
I'm pretty sure anybody on this channel has already taken advantage of that.
I'm sure there's some sex robot deals out there as well. So carry on, fellas.